Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and I'm happy to welcome in Eze Peralta. He is the VP of Technology at SPI Logistics, and we're going to be talking about the role that IT plays at a 3PL. So, Eze, welcome into the show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, for folks who may not be familiar with you and your background, kind of give us an idea of how you first started off with technology. When did you know that technology was, or IT infrastructure was going to be your career path?
Well, I think at a very, very early age, I started using computers when I was age 4. That was
Oh,
the
wow.
first computer. My dad was into learning graphic design and this kind of thing, so he got an old Mac, and that was kind of like love at first sight. Started on the graphic design, more like Illustrator, Photoshop, that kind of stuff. Then but always really interested in how things really work and the mechanisms behind it. I always knew that I was going to get into coding one day.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, I used my first experience with databases was with some custom built database that I did for a small business that I had with, um, I used to do screen printing. So I created the software for that business, and
Oh,
then
wow.
created software also for other like small businesses like that. And then my my first like bigger job opportunity was at an online travel agency where we were with a friend. We were developing the data warehouse and all their analytics solution. So that was my first like bigger project, and that was kind of like what led me to SPI. The first project that I did for SPI, um, with my friend Valentin, who is now also working with SPI, was the data warehousing tool, and that was our first experience. Then I got the offer to come on board, and yeah, thanks to the trust of of our leadership team, Mitch and Joe Chandler, um, that's when all started in logistics for me. And I have to say, I'm really thankful that of all the learning process that I had in SPI about the freight industry, because when I just first started, it was very new to me. I had an idea of the brokerage model
Hmm.
from online travel agencies, but I learned so much from everyone here, and yeah, very
So,
grateful
uh,
for that.
so can I nerd out with you for a little bit? How do you build a database?
Well, more than that, well, building a database or an implementation of a database model for a company. Generally, there is a lot of research on the on the data model, on the design of the data model, right? What is the scope and the grain of the data that you want to store?
Hmm.
It's like you want to store things by date. Is your business related to a timing issues? Is related to quantities? Is related to more a very general level? Then, for example, for a freight brokerage or these are very complex data models because, for example, people usually tend to oversimplify, but it's a lot about thinking about how you model reality into an abstraction or in this case a database. But it's a lot about talking with the actual business experts in order to know how they think about things and
Hmm.
try to translate that into a mechanism that will fulfill those requirements. Something that I noticed analyzing data models for TMS systems is many times there's like a glitch or an error or an issue on finding that granularity. For example, okay, you model a load, right? But then what happens if that load has many line items and each one of those line items go into a different truck? And then that truck has maybe a team, right, driving. So then you have the driver, so then you're doing tracking on a driver, but then that load changes driver, and then but it's all in the same order, right? And the
Hmm.
customer will want to see that as one, right? But as one order, but maybe on the carrier side they will see a piece of that order, and you don't want also that data to leak, right? Or so it's a lot about that. Like designing databases is one of my main, I don't know, I really like it, the
Hmm.
data modeling aspect of it. But yeah, that's usually.
Because from what I understand, and I'm very like loose sort of. Oh, I like to consider myself as tech savvy, but I don't. That walking into a server room at a 3PL was my big like eye opening moment. Like, wow, this is how a lot of the functionality of how things work. But then you're talking about sort of the inside guts of that server itself and how you're programming different texts and different I guess TMS, the information that you're reading within a TMS, you're coding that a certain way so the database understands it. So if you're looking to pull records or sort records, then it will be pulled correctly. Is that a kind of a general overview?
Yeah, and for example, the main challenge, one of the main tasks that I had when I started with the data warehousing project here is that we had at that time 3 different TMS systems in production. So
Oh
there
wow.
was a group of agents using a legacy system that was a client server system. Then there was a group of agents working with a web version of that same TMS system, and then there was a subset of agents working with the newer TMS system that we were migrating to. Eventually, we'll get everyone into the newer TMS system, but in the meantime, we needed to have our KPIs every day on how the business is doing. Now, one system will say, okay, a load has these fields, right, or these columns, but the other system would say, well, a load for us is these other columns, right? So we needed to create basically all the architecture and the database modeling to pull all that into a common model that will be able to tell us, no matter where the load is coming from, no matter the TMS, can I build that SPI owned uh, abstraction over the business objects that we are dealing with. Because what is a load or what is an order for SPI? It might not be the same of what is an order for ABC TMS or XYZ TMS. So um, yeah, that was actually one of the main challenges. That's how I learned a lot about the freight industry itself, by just seeing the how information is stored in these systems,
Mm.
right?
And so,
How
what is, I guess, for folks who may not be aware, what is the, I guess, positive outcome or maybe dangerous outcome of not having a database that's properly maintained and organized? What could be the, I guess, the downstream effects of that not being the case, not being properly optimized?
I think you lose power on the insight, right, that
Mm.
you can get from your data. Um, I think everyone is familiar with the term garbage in, garbage out with
Sure.
data management, right? Um, and then I think more important than the data that is stored in each table on the database, then you have the aspect of the relationships, right? How does relate this a load? How does relate a load with a stop? How does relate
Mm.
a stop with a tractor? How does it relate with? And not having that model properly gives you a lot gives you a lot of issues that don't know that you're having, because it's hard to know or hard to see an issue where you don't know there's an issue there because it was never there. It's not something that it was done and then it broke. It was never there. So basically, I think yeah, the main point would be losing possibility of insight in the future over
Hmm.
your own data and operation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like for, the marketers out there, or the sales leaders out there, it's having a lot of crap leads maybe in your CRM. Like it looks good to have 20,000 leads in that CRM, but if it's crap or if they're fake email addresses or something, then, you're not going to find out until you actually go to start sending them messages.
Yeah, or you end up, because maybe from a lead you cannot convert that into they didn't model the proper follow-up objects of, okay, a lead becomes an opportunity becomes an account. And maybe if you're missing some of those tables where to store information, or you don't have those relationships there in the data, um, then you will end up basically putting all that into another system or in a spreadsheet, or kind of like, building something around it. And that's when things start to go sideways, because all the purpose of implementing software is to fulfill a business need, right? And then you start
Right.
kind of adapting your processes to the software instead of the opposite. And I think, that's not a good path.
And so when so how long ago did you join SPI?
I started with SPI in 2018.
Oh wow. Okay. So the I guess organizing the databases was a big part of your job initially. So what does your sort of the day-to-day look like for you now? Is it managing that database now?
More than database, I think I'm more focused on the business processes and how trying to see the overall picture besides the operational side of the freight brokerage portion.
Hmm.
When I started here, one of my main goals was to talk with the team who is actually using the software. The client care team has been so helpful. The AP and AR team has been so helpful in teaching me how they use the software, and they came up with all these. Would it is there a way how we could do this instead of entering this spreadsheet data into this system? Is there a way we could do it better? And then we started talking about it, and like we came up in some cases we realized that we didn't need that spreadsheet to start with
Hmm.
because there was another way where we so instead of running into the implementation of a software solution to do that, we started questioning, do we need that spreadsheet to start with? Do we need that process overall to start with? Or maybe doing a couple of changes in the process will basically define all your problems out of scope,
Hmm.
and get rid of all these problems without even implementing any software. Because for me, it I prefer to write less code, and I prefer to maintain less infrastructure, less software, and the code that never fails is the code that never is never written, right?
Oh, very true. Nice.
so, so I feel happy when I get to delete code, right?
Huh.
Because I'm decreasing complexity basically in many cases. Sometimes you need to add, but I think that's a like an overall rule for everyone into the software world is not go after implementation right away. It's like, okay, what are you want to implementing? Is it necessary at all? You know?
And I think that I love that you said that you actually talked to employees before you started implementing a lot of different tech solutions or trying to essentially put a band-aid on a broken leg. I think that that's what a lot of organizations do is that they just see the shiny new piece of software, the shiny new piece of tech, and they just go ahead and buy it, and then they throw it on the team that's actually going to use it, and the team hates it. So I think that I love that you answered that question that way, where you're talking to the team before you actually make those tech investments. Is that has that I would imagine that's proven successful for you guys to actually talk to the team members first, right?
Yes, for sure. And there needs to be a balance because sometimes people will want to, of course, stick to the old ways and the way they're doing things, the way they know. So there's a lot you need to also kind of like encourage them to where they're going to see the improvement. And I think sometimes there's some sort of arrogance from people from the software where it's like, oh, why people are hating this so much if it's so much better than what they already do? Well, they are the ones that, let's listen to what they have to say
Mm.
because they might have good points, and maybe there's little tweaks that we can do in order to fit those needs. So yeah, it's proven successful, and I think trying to see it as an overall approach besides, okay, operations and TMS and then back office. But because let's say you get a new TMS system, right, and then then you increase your order count by an order of magnitude, right? You have 3 times more loads, right? Okay, now you have to pay them. Now you have to build them. Now, if your back office is working on spreadsheets and printing checks in your office, then suddenly you're going to find out, or you need a bigger printer, or you need more. What people do is, okay, you have all these maybe super fancy software doing the order management, but then on the billing side, you have basically an office with a bunch of people doing very repetitive work, and then you're in whatever you're winning on one side, you are basically losing on the other side. So it needs to grow all together. I think that has been my idea from the beginning. Like putting a lot of focus on the back office has proven also successful.
So give us, I guess, a sense of the tech stack that SPI, if that SPI sort of I would imagine that the TMS is sort of the backbone of the entire organization, and then what do those additional tools sort of look like? Are you investing in third party software and integrating that into the TMS, or what does the tech stack look like for a typical freight agent coming on board?
Yeah, so the tech landscape, at the center, I would say we're trying to move the TMS from the center of the tech stack,
Hmm.
and of course, it's always going to be the center of the stack because it's a transportation management software and it's built for it. It's where most of the domain lives, right? All the objects that have the naming of what we deal with, like load, stop, driver, carrier, that's lives in the TMS. But that's not everything to the business. So we have the CRM, which is how we get our leads for new agents, and like then we have our AR and AP, right? So we used Triumph Pay for processing payments. We use them also for doing OCR on the PODs that we receive. So all that process automated. So we built an integration with them, so we can basically automatically submit the payments and audit if if a payable is ready to be sent, then we send it. But if not, it will go into different queue where we're going to evaluate. Okay, there's a mismatch on the there's an exception on the mismatch on the amounts or whatever it is. Then we have all the load boards, right? DAT, track stop. Then we're onboarding now with Parade for doing digital matching. We also have Kleinschmidt for EDI connectivity, connecting with all the EDI value-added networks and FTP providers. Then we have we're using AcuFreight for LTL, and then um, we have some bots initiatives also for those sites where there's no API to call. We also have we create our own visibility sharing um, platform. I would say it's all in the background. There's no user interface, but we basically created these reusable components to be able to share location data with any of our shippers, no matter the system they use. So we
Oh
have
wow.
now 4 kites, P44. So we're feeding their systems with our location data that we get from the tracking providers. We have MacroPoint, P44, and tracker tools. We like to always offer like a few options because features that we don't have in one we can get from another one. And when I was talking about trying to not have the TMS at the center, is that we built and we are continuing the process of continuing building an integration layer, or what we call SPI data services,
Hmm.
where for any integration that we do, we integrate the TMS and the data sources with our SPI data services platform. And from there, we can feed data to the data warehouse and also feed any other data source. So we created some custom uh, libraries or code libraries to reutilize in our own integrations. We deploy all this in our own infrastructure in the cloud, um, trying to follow all the best practices regarding security, observability, governance, and all these things. And that has proven also a good approach. Like owning your own integrations, I think that's a key because you cannot be waiting for your software provider to integrate a system because maybe that's not something they want to do because
Hmm.
maybe it's not good for their customer base. But in our case, we cannot be waiting for another vendor to say, oh yeah, we're gonna integrate this, and maybe they integrate it, but maybe they don't integrate the data points you need, and then you waited all that time,
Right.
and it's like, well, it doesn't work for me now. So yeah, we built quite a nice, I think, platform to allow us get the best features from every vendor, but give them a context and a process and a way of using it and a documentation and
Hmm.
and to make it work for us.
And it almost sounds like it's like an Apple, like an Apple store with a bunch of apps that you can kind of pick and choose on which ones that you want to use as a freight agent. Is that a safe bet, or is it kind of, this is the suggested tech stack that you should use for X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, actually, one point, it's SPI is a network, right? So each office is different, and SPI embraces this difference. Instead of trying to equalize and or trying to say no, this is the way how you should do things. Of course, we have proposed best practice. Of course, we have how we think things should be done, but also we understand there are as many ways of working as dispatchers and brokers are, and even in that best practices path, a lot of complexity and differences, right? So we try to embrace that. So
Hmm.
if someone wants to use EDI for their tenders, but then they want to use load boards in certain way, then we set them up for that, right? But then if someone else says, "Oh, actually, I want to feed my loads from a separate system," well, then we will evaluate if that the complexity of the project, and then if we can do it, then we will just integrate it. And so we try to make it so it's evolvable. So because maybe tomorrow you will want to incorporate a new tool, okay? So we just plug it in, right? And and we adapt to the complexity and the requirements of each agent,
Hmm.
basically. So some agents, we had the case, for example, with the LTL, the TMS we use, it has a good LTL integrations, but for people who is focused on LTL, they need maybe an LTL focused TMS or software, right? So what we did is we created an integration where they book their loads in an LTL oriented software, which is AcuFreight, and then we sync that data with our main TMS. Then our R&D team, they don't even know where that payable or billing came from.
Hmm.
So if it came from TMS one or TMS two, it's a billing and it's a payable. You should audit it and you should pay it, and or you should uh, bill it to the customer. So that's kind of the approach that we want to have, where if you come to SPI and it's like, oh, actually I want to use this combo of features or this combo of things, well, we can make it happen. And yeah.
So I guess when you're or a new agent is thinking about joining SPI, do they typically meet with you or somebody else from the tech team in order to answer some of those questions? And if so, what are some of those common questions that they're asking?
Yeah, so sometimes they would meet with me before onboarding, just to get to know. I would give a demo of the system. Our client care team can give demos too, but sometimes they want something more specific, or I want to know how EDI tendering looks like in your platform. Okay, and then we do it. Or what options do you have for tracking, how the reporting works, or um, so generally, yeah, we do a demo. They explain what they need, and then we explain what is the toolkit that we have in order, you know, to fit those needs and how we can make it work. Um, and again, sometimes because we are a small team, we are not a software company, so we need to evaluate it. Our resources are also limited, so it might take more time for us to build something than if a software company, software company. But in reality, because we have already so much already built, it becomes faster. So we're not starting from zero, right?
Hmm.
You already have all this toolkit, and it's basically grabbing this piece, this piece, this piece. This is how we can make it work for you.
And so I would imagine for a lot of these folks that are interested in becoming a freight agent and they contact you guys and they're ready to move forward, I would imagine that they would be saving a considerable amount of money by, using some of the licenses and the software tools that you guys have already spent an incredible amount of not only money but time as well investing into these platforms. But what if somebody wants to keep, say they've had a load board for years, or they've had their own sort of CRM for years? Can they keep that valuable data? Can they migrate it over, or do they have the option to keep it and still within their, I guess, their own ecosystem?
I think, yeah, I think they have both options, or the three options. They could keep it on their side. Of course, whatever data they need to enter as part of SPI will be shared. They can choose to migrate that into our operational system, or they can choose to migrate that into our data warehouse for just to store it, and then start fresh with a new install of the TMS. But that's something that we usually do. For example, people has this big list of locations or customers, so we have processes to just upload all that into our platform, and then so yeah, they have both options. And even, yeah, if they're using a specific load board, and if that load board has an API, then we will work with them to integrate it. Same for visibility sharing, or this is a very common requirement that we have is, oh, my shippers are wanting to get a daily file with the location of all their shipments, and we can set that up in a day. And I don't know how is the process in, but if a small broker, like a one person operation, would want to build that out, you know to send a daily visibility file or real time updates to their shippers, they will have not only to buy software but also work with to really adjust all the little knobs and
They probably don't have time for that.
and that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. The timing. That's something that it gets forgotten. People are on their day to day doing stuff and doing their, taking care of their orders, and they don't want to spend that extra time, and they shouldn't have to.
And so I imagine, after, maybe some of those initial questions are answered, a new agent signs and they're ready to get rolling. What does that, I guess, onboarding time look like? Because I know for, a lot of folks, it's, you got to manage the freight every single day, all day, every day. So any kind of, I guess, time away from that is almost seen as a frustration. So how do you sort of mitigate that level of frustration as they're onboarding and learning these new systems? What does the, I guess, the time period look like, and how do you, I guess, you make it as easy on them as possible?
So we have an amazing client care team that will give the training. We have a portal where you have videos on the training for the TMS. We can upload the locations and customers, and we do all the credit check and all of that before their go live date. So by the time they get their login, people can go in the system and start booking loads from day one. From day
Oh,
one, you
wow.
can book your loads, and that including posting to load boards. Our onboarding we put a lot of effort in automating the onboarding process and tracking it. So we schedule our training sessions. Um, After those training sessions, if there's a need of upload these locations for data, we do that. So by the time agreed with the new agent, they can start booking loads day one. And then, of course, like getting used to a new software, maybe you are slower at the beginning, and then you start getting up to speed, entering more new customers and these kind of things. But
It sounds like too, it's one of those things that you don't really know, I think, how it's going to impact your daily life until you're in the new system. And so it kind of goes back to your earlier point about defining what those processes look like, and then maybe, it's changing a little bit of your processes on your end of things in order to speed up things later on. So they're not only, saving money on a lot of these different licenses, but they're also getting better and more access to different licenses that they probably didn't have before. And then now with a lot of the different automation that you guys are integrating, then they're saving more time and probably allows them, I would imagine, to be able to develop deeper relationships with their customers. What are some of those other, I would imagine that that's a light bulb moment for them once they really get into the system. Are there any other sort of light bulb moments for them, making this transition tech wise?
I think a big part of it is the fact that they don't have to take care of billing and paying, right? The back office support, that's a huge thing because it allows people to focus on, managing freight, not managing, if a check didn't go to the right address or things like that. At the same time, I think there's a high benefit on participating in an organization that is oriented to high efficiency. And it's not that we're gonna think about it. We're gonna work with the agency in order to understand the problem and try to find a solution, a not not saying, oh, you're wrong, you should do it this way. Okay, what are you trying to say, right? Like how we can. And I think a light bulb moment is when, yeah, it's like, so I just need to book freight and talk with my customers. Well, yeah, that's it. And it's and they gain a lot of the fact of b- because of being part of an organization that is focused on high efficiency. They start seeing the benefits of that as well. Of, okay, I can learn from these business processes. I can learn from other agents as well. I can learn from this network. How can I do my part better? And but knowing that carriers are going to get paid, your money is going to be collected, you're going to get your commissions, you're not going to have any. If you have an issue, then you're going to call client care and they're going to help you right away. If there is a claim, we're going to take care of that. Work with the agent to solve that claim. um, so I think that liable moment is where, oh, now I can be hyper focused on my business.
And I think too, you're highlighting a good point that for a lot of these folks, I would imagine that you don't know what you don't know, and then you finally get into a new system of processes, a new way of thinking, and maybe at first it's kind of a little worrying because you're so used to having your hands in everything, and now you don't have to worry about that anymore. So maybe at first it's kind of jarring, a little bit, surprising. I know I've experienced this in my own business where I've implemented different automation strategies, and it feels weird to not have to micromanage each of those little things. So I imagine a lot of that is going on with them too, once they make or complete that onboarding process.
Yes, totally. And I think the key to calm that is communication and observability. Like, if you can have KPIs and reporting on how many loads you were able to move before, how many loads are you being able to move now, how much time you were spending on these processes, and that now you're spending zero. um, I think, and that takes time, and that, some people will, and it depends on the personality also. Some people will still want to have their hard copy on paper, and and that's okay. Like, they want to have their spreadsheets with their what their commission should be. And I think we encourage that. It's like, it adds to the transparency. And if there's an error or an issue with data inconsistency, then, well, thanks for letting us know. We'll work on that. But yeah, the key to that, I think, is observability, reporting, like KPIs, and being able to see that and measure it.
So with when everybody, I guess when COVID happened, if a few years ago, and everybody's working from home, there was a big sort of outcry, I think, in a lot of like the corporate tech world, that this is going to open everybody up to malicious attacks and cybersecurity issues and things like that. But with an agent model, you guys are kind of all used to having these remote offices all over the place. How are you, I guess, monitoring or mitigating potential cybersecurity risk in sort of this environment that most companies find themselves in with remote offices all over the place?
Yeah, so that there, it would depend on the, what's called, the vector, right? Or where the attack is coming from, or there are many ways. So, for example, email phishing, like, it's really hard to combat because, if it only takes one person to click a link, enter their password, and then, right? So that we do what everyone does, which is protecting our email server as much as we can, and we use uh, cloud for that. We don't use on premise for emails, and we don't use on premise for almost anything. We do have some internal storage, but we are leveraging cloud infrastructure in order to combat that, but used in a way that, for example, all of our we use multi-account setup. So every integration that we do, it's its own little world.
Hmm.
So if you are attacking that integration, basically we can take it down and spawn it. We can spawn like another one, like with with different URLs and everything in minutes, or like because we've been putting a lot of effort on automating our deployment,
Hmm.
automating our infrastructure. We use infrastructure as code. I'm going more in the internal parts, but
No, I think that's cool
it
whenever, cybersecurity issues happen and what you have to do to mitigate those risks in a modern day environment.
yeah, and we have daily snapshots of our databases and daily snapshots of our. We log all the queries and the data warehouse and all of that, and I think well, I think cloud infrastructure used in the right way helps a lot in and it opens up other possibilities for attacks. But I think yes, um, we try to not keep all of our data as it was before. People would have this one database that if you lose that database, you're done.
Hmm.
So we have our structure is more distributed. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you watched The Office, but there's like that one scene in that, well, even if you don't watch The Office, but there's that one scene that kind of everybody will use as a meme where it's like, oh my God, it's happening, and everybody starts running around the office like crazy. I tend to think that that's what happens when like a cybersecurity attack happens. Is that accurate or probably not at all? You guys are probably
Like
have so many different protocols that you don't even have to worry about that. But that's what I imagine happening, anyways.
yeah, knock on wood, we didn't have a serious incident like in our systems, like at least since I'm here. We had like phishing attacks to emails, people trying to get to other users emails and these kind of things. But on the TMS side and on the integration side, um, we take it very seriously and we try to be as preventive as possible. And
Hmm.
so far it's been good. And um, so yeah,
That's
it
good.
didn't
Knock
happen
on wood.
yet. So no, there was no panic so far. But I imagine that would be what happens. But um, the one of the vectors that we are more exposed as is we are integrating multiple systems, right? But so what happens if one of those systems go down? But the fact that we have our integration layer means that you could replace that with a spreadsheet
Hmm.
in the meantime, while you are you can mitigate that, and your entire operation will continue working. You will probably slow down because you have one component that is not feeding the overall process at the rate it should, but you can still operate,
Hmm.
right? Like even for us, for example, if we don't have access to our TMS, but someone wants to get a report on how many loads we did yesterday, you can just go in and get it because that data comes from a data warehouse, a different system, different storage, different permissions, different credentials, different everything. So you cannot attack the entire thing, right? Like, I think that's the main point.
So there's different layers of security that sit on top of it.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked. We've mentioned the phrase a few times, during this discussion with automation. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about, AI and ChatGPT.
Hmm.
Can't, really like take a step outside without somebody mentioning it. I feel like it definitely in my world, you can't not hear about it multiple times every single day. I'm curious as to, what your early thoughts on using systems like this on top of the data that you already have, which I think is kind of where ChatGPT like technology is heading.
Yes, I think we use ChatGPT, and we use also other AI tools for coding.
Oh, cool.
We use GitHub Copilot, and I think these tools are awesome as long as you know to how to direct them, right?
Hmm.
So generally, I found that for junior developers, it helps, but it's not gonna take them to the next level, right? But in the hands of someone who is more on the software architecture side, where in the data modeling, as we were talking before, or exploring a problem space and its solution space and all of that, I think it's interesting because it can provide you a lot of nice insight, and it can speed up a lot of the boilerplate code, and sometimes, but it's not gonna help you define your processes better,
Hmm.
because the business users are the ones who really know how the process should be, and should drive that. And I think, going back to what you're saying about data, right? Like, um, I think there is an um, underestimated power of the processes over the data, because people are focused on the output, on the which is the data itself, right? I say, oh, I'm seeing this spreadsheet or report or BI tool, but that is just a output from a process, right? And what is your process? So how data gets cleaned up, how it gets collected, how it gets, is it compliant? The way how you're collecting it is compliant, or you're
Hmm.
getting in legal trouble because of how you're collecting it. Like, there are so much more to that than seeing the number, and also with business process. So I think, yeah, to answer the question, ChatGPT, we use it a lot, mostly on that side, but we give it a
Hmm.
lot of direction onto what we're building, and and yeah, I think it works better the more you know about what you're doing.
That's interesting. I did. You're the first. I've asked. I think in like the last four interviews I've had, I've asked. How folks are using ChatGPT like technology, and almost all of them have said that they are. I think about 3 out of 5 had said that they are, and then 2 of them are kind of just a little scared by it. But I agree with you. I think the outputs are there, and you can see those kind of early light bulb moments happening, but it still takes somebody that is highly experienced that can see the nuance in it, especially like on the marketing side of things, or even on the podcasting side of things. I'm using ChatGPT a lot for that, but I know what to look for and what not to look for, if that makes sense. Like some of the stuff that I'm getting, like they'll it'll so for example, I'm using it in transcription. So I'll take a podcast transcript and upload it to ChatGPT and tell it to find me the most 5 impactful moments from this conversation, but sometimes it will pull things that we did not even talk about. And so you still have to have that nuance, that experience level to fact check it, to make sure, because it will confidently tell you an answer and it might not be the right answer.
And also, these tools are so biased that we can actually get them to say what we want them to say, and it
Mm.
becomes this feedback loop where you can basically make ChatGPT say that 2 plus 2 is 5. And so, and I think you said a key word there, that is nuance. Like, humans are very highly adapted to understand the nuances of everything. We are always, our curious minds are trying to, find all those patterns that don't match, and those details. And I think AI tools are not as good at that level. So they're very good at, okay, write a piece of code that does this thing, but then you need to go in and find those nuances and make it. If you just use it as is, you're probably gonna, you know, um, suffer that pain in the future when
Mm.
you need to go back in that to that and do it again because it was
So
wrong.
do you see, I guess, an environment where like a chat GPT powered like chat box is sitting on top of like a TMS, and maybe for some of your customers or some of the freight agents, they can use chat GPT to ask what's the most efficient carrier to handle this lane for me. Does something like that exist, or it kind of sounds like maybe like a parade would be doing that instead of like a chat GPT?
Yeah, I think because ChatGPT is trained for natural language processing, right? And in many cases, to do digital matching of freight, you are looking at other types of data. It's not natural language processing. So chatbots could help mostly on the support side, maybe, and
Hmm.
because they will give you, they will make it really a really nice answer about this should be your carrier because of this and this and this. But if they don't have access to a machine learning model that uses the right signals to determine that, how can you know that it's actually that that carrier is the best? So I think ChatGPT is mostly oriented to natural language processing. Other machine learning and AI tools, um, I think, will be a best fit for more like digital matching rates,
Well, like
and
specialized
is
freight
specialized.
activities where
Yeah,
ChatGPT is just not there
uh,
yet.
and we should not underestimate the complexity of the problems we're dealing with. Like
Hmm.
having a dynamic pricing is not a trivial problem. Like matching a carrier with a load is not a trivial problem, and there's a lot of this also. Like, of course, on a sales call, there's gonna be this is easy. It's gonna be easy. We're gonna give you this number that is a magic number that if you put that number in your bid, you're gonna win that bid. I think it doesn't work like that. It's just it's more complex than that. It might
Yeah,
work for a subset of people or subset of cases, but there are so many.
I think everybody wants a blanket approach to this, forgetting that there's other people on the other side of the transaction that have their own needs and specifications and their own nuance that they want to or prioritize.
And something, if I may add something to that, is I think there is something kind of important to mention about the model itself of software companies and startups, and versus having people in your brokerage or in your freight company or freight brokerage company who understands technology and is able to at least build something, even if you're not going to build a TMS, because um, SPI is uh, it's been in the industry for a while, right? And anything that we build is going to stay with the company for a while. We're not trying to build something quick, so we go up out to market and then we get some customers, and because that's not our business. Our business is the free broker, not selling software. With technology companies, sometimes they just run after a set of features because they got a few contacts at some business experts that they tell them, okay, this is what you should build. It's very biased to that subset of people, and then they try to build it as quickly as possible, and in that process sometimes quality get and possibility of customization and all the nuances can get lost. So I think, yeah, there is something kind of like broken in that model itself, and I think that's why we took this path of, okay, we need vendors, we need all this technology because we cannot build this dynamic pricing tool ourselves in a time that would make sense.
Hmm.
So we're going to use them, but okay, we're going to also own the integration so we can um, use them in the way that we need, making sure it works for us. And also, what happens if that new company that is all new and shiny doesn't do well? It could happen, and SPI is
Very
going to
true.
still be here. But we have seen companies, tech companies, come up and down. Get you know or maybe they start focusing on brokers, but then suddenly they have a big trucking company customer. They start adding features that are only for asset base, and then we are like, oh, we are customers too. We want these new features too, but you need to wait because now we have another customer that is, and that's part of their model because of course they have to do that because they need to be profitable,
Hmm.
and we need to be profitable too. So I find a tension there, and I think a lot of what we built it's kind of answering to that tension as well.
And I think that you said it very well, where it's almost it brings the whole conversation, kind of circling back in full circle, where you're really analyzing your processes from not only a personnel level, but also from a business level. And you can't be distracted at the business level from the shiny new tech object that takes you away from your overall mission. And that is, providing technology solutions that can, help your freight agents now and in the future. So with all that said, where does I guess sort of the tech outlook look like for, maybe in the months to come, maybe, in the coming year? What should, maybe some freight agents that are on the fence, about joining the company, or maybe some current freight agents that are listening to this, what should they expect, coming down the pipeline from SPI?
Well, what we are working on is in all continue improving the integration layer so we can continue making it easier to integrate whatever new software and tool that may come up, make it easy to integrate. Um, then there's some automation on the back office also as well, because we notice the company is growing, so we need to make sure that you know uh, we don't have a bottleneck in our back office. So there are some automation initiatives, but for the agent facing, we're integrating digital frame matching. Next to that is going to come the digital booking as well, what they call the book it now. Um, so we have LTL integration with LTL specific tooling, and all that is seamless and connected with the TMS. So those we are launching a scoring program for carriers. So we our director of carrier procurement, Mark, came up with this amazing logic to to score carriers, and yeah, to offer more tools to agents to book their freight. Yeah, to get access to improve their carrier relationships, to reduce the possibility of claims and fraud. We'll be working also on the dynamic pricing side, but we want to do that all in. We want to do it in a solid way, because
You don't
we
want to
had
rush it.
yeah, because I find that there are certain tools that are not mature enough yet. That's my perception, at least. It's like they're very new, but like it. Oh, you should charge $2,000 for this. Um, and when I ask how did you get to that, I never got a clear answer on how did you get to that, and they don't want to tell you. So it's from trust. So we will use these tools, but okay, how? Because once you start automating, it's okay. Let's automate bidding, right? Okay, now are you bidding at the right price? Are you bidding on loads that are actually good for you? So all of that
Oh,
is what we are.
yeah, that's interesting. It's not just about, integrating the tool and then never looking at it again. It's the constant monitoring of it, of what is the value that this tool is bringing to our platform.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's okay. This tool is telling me that carrier A is really good for your. Is very close to your load. Does that mean that it's good for your load? It's telling me that it's close by. Now, what we did is okay. We get that information from a vendor that, in this case, Parade gives us the carrier matches by location, but maybe we find that that's in our rating that's an F carrier. So maybe you don't want to book with that carrier because it already had many claims with SPI. So isn't that those are the things that we are working on right now, in all these integrations that we are building, adding all of this. And also our agents don't need to log into a separate system to get all this.
Oh, that's good.
Because oh, we onboarded this new tool. Okay, here's your login. Okay, then now you have to go to another
Then you have
login,
72 tabs open
and you copy
on your
that data,
computer.
and then you need to copy it back somewhere else. So we don't like that. So all the integration we build, we try to bring into the TMS, but keeping the option that if we need to do it other way, we also have that option.
So it sounds like an agile and flexible solution, especially for a lot of these agents that are out here that they don't know what they don't know. And so being able to still have some of the tools that they're comfortable with, but also being exposed to learning about these new systems and processes and ways of thinking that I think just goes back to sort of the root of all, tech purchases that you should be thinking about before you make that purchase is what do your processes look like and what do you wish that you didn't have to do so you can do more of what you want to do. And you should never make a tech purchase if you don't know what those processes are in the first place.
Totally, totally, totally. And you should know what you need. And like, um, if there's no need, then there's nothing to really offer, right? Like to be offered. So yeah, something that I appreciate from SPI is that we have a lot of good communication with agents, and agents can call me. They don't have to go to over like 20 people to get to the IT department to look at their requirements. And of course, we have a list of priorities, we have our roadmap and everything, but everyone can just hey, Eze, what can we make this happen? This customer has a very specific need. They need a file with this specific format and they want it, and this is my this is, if I land this account, it's going to be great for my business. And then so we work closely with the agent to make it happen. And if it's very, very, very custom, we don't say, well, I don't know, it's too custom. It's like, we knew it was going to be custom, we are ready for it.
I love that. I think that that's a perfect place to sort of land on for a lot of prospective agents, and current agents, just thinking about maybe making the switch or maybe they're on the fence right now that it doesn't have to be a painful process. I think for most of us that have worked in freight long enough, you've experienced the pain that is a terrible tech stack onboarding. I once worked for a company that we had a TMS and we integrated. We spent 2 years adding it to our system, and it still didn't have an accounting functionality to it. So it was kind of a hot mess, and the company ended up going out of business anyway. So I mean, that was probably the wrong tech investment can be detrimental. And so at least from that angle, from a freight agent perspective, it sounds like everything that SPI is doing is thoughtful and then also customizable.
Yes, totally. That's
All
a
right.
great description.
Oh, thank you. Well, where can folks, if they're interested, if they are one of those folks that are kind of on the fence, thinking about becoming a freight agent, where can folks, find out more information? I imagine it, right there on the website, SPILogistics.com. Any other resources that you think that would be helpful for a potential freight agent to know?
Yeah, our website is SPI3PL, like the number 3PL.com.
SPI3PL.
Then I would encourage them to talk with, they can email me personally, eperalta@spi3pl.com. Feel free to chat and say, hey, I'm interested, and
Nice.
we want to have a demo of the system. Yeah, for sure, let's set it up. If they want to reach out to Mike, Mike Mikulik, he will be also happy to. So I guess just reach out to us, and our executive team is here to to talk with you. We're not gonna be hiding, or yeah, we'll I encourage them to email us directly, to me or Mike or any on the team. I can share the emails of everyone
For
if
sure.
needed.
And I think I'll make it easy for folks. I'll put your email address in the show notes, so hopefully you won't get hit with any kind of too much spam or anything like that. But just to make it easy for folks out there, I'll put your email in the show notes as well as the SPI3PL.com website, which should be already in all of our show notes. So any episode that you listen to on Everything is Logistics, you'll see them. They are a proud sponsor, or I am I guess a proud podcaster that has the support of SPI. So these shows are definitely brought to you by SPI, but all of the conversation that you heard in this is as honest and authentic as they come. We're kind of, no BS around here. So SA, I appreciate your insight and kind of entertaining a lot of the different, questions that I threw your way. This was really insightful conversation, and appreciate your time.
I appreciate it too. I enjoyed it, and yeah, thank you very much for having me.